I wanted to talk a little bit about the craziness that's going on. And I do I do feel like it's kind of post midterms craziness. And it's in some ways a kind of predictable reaction to things. I mean, first off, the midterms weren't the worst thing in the world for Republicans. I mean, they could say, oh, well, we took back the House or whatever, but they also spent $250 million on the Senate, and they're going to be in a worse position. They certainly didn't take it. And anyway, the whole victory in the House is viewed as lackluster, and all the Trump candidates, or many of the Trump candidates, lost. And certainly the kind of hardcore type election denier people definitely lost. And so there's this kind of weird ambivalent feeling in the air of, what do we do? Should we just get rid of Trump and go mainstream? I think that's actually quite delusional for them to do that, because ultimately the GOP is very unpopular, and it actually is Trump's craziness that kind of gives it a reason for being, and makes it popular, and kind of you can't take your eyes off it. But I also just sense something deeper happening. And this Kanye Fuentes stuff fascinates me. I have a little bit of a conspiracy theory about it, and I'm going to relay that. Take this, for instance, the Colorado Springs shooting, obviously terrible event, one of these lone wolf types. I mean, I think we're going to find out more about him, and the fact that his dad is, like, I don't know, quasi endorsing it, basically excusing it and saying, well, at least he's not gay or something, and also showing all of these weird facial tics of someone who is really mentally ill. We're probably going to find out a lot, like we found out about the Buffalo shooter, this kind of kid who has real issues, family problems, and he's kind of driven to something. I mean, I think it's hard to believe that this was a random shooting. I mean, granted, the Pulse nightclub event, which also was a gay bar, was apparently not animated by any kind of anti-homosexual animus. That, of course, might happen again, but it just seems unlikely. It seems like we're going to find out some radicalization story that's a lot like the Buffalo shooter. And the reaction to this has been interesting, because for years now, at least 20 years, in fact, we've kind of been used to the Islamic terrorist of some kind, maybe even like a Black nationalist terrorist of sorts in Dallas, Texas in 2015 or 2016. And the right will be like, oh, they're not telling us the real story. He's connected to all these groups, or this is why we need to shut down immigration, and the usual type things. And there's no doubt that these terrorist acts are kind of random acts of violence, of course, but they do kind of like get people on edge, and probably do make people more right wing and on some kind of visceral level. But we're in this kind of different situation where I do think it's safe to say that the right is more or less making excuses for this kid. And they're doing it in kind of deceptive ways, or they're deflecting. But I mean, Tucker Carlson had this girl on who's part of a group called Gays Against Groomers. And the banner underneath his interview with her said, memo to liberals, just leave the kids out of it, or something like this. And that is actually threatening language, even if they don't want to endorse what happened. There's a kind of like, well, this was bound to happen when you bring gender ideology into public schools or something like that. And the woman he interviewed is just some totally astroturfed turf, I guess, I guess. Just one of these people that just, they're almost like, I mean, they might be kind of actually created. There's nothing really going for them. They're not interesting or important, but they kind of have some pop-up shop like group, like Gays Against Groomers, and they're just there to go on Tucker Carlson as like, oh, this is a grassroots activist or something. Her grassroots activism seems to be social media and selling merch at a store, merch like a coffee cup that says "Okay Groomer," hilarious. Her argument was this: it was, if you say that calling someone a groomer is an anti-LGBTQ whatever slur, then so liberals are saying that, and so they are in a way targeting gays and lesbians. So she's blaming liberals for the fact that this person went nuts. So she was in effect blaming liberals. It was a kind of like, you forced us to act like this due to your reckless behavior on social media. I mean, look, the argument just simply doesn't hold up. And it's just much easier to argue that this is one of these probably, mentally ill, deranged loser types who gets really hopped up on this stuff on they're grooming kids in schools, they're, the gays are on the march or whatever, and goes out and does something. I mean, that's just the much simpler explanation. And instead, at least that bottom banner that said, memo to liberals, just leave the kids alone. I mean, that is basically a threat. And I think they're kind of upping the ante on this. There's another weird statement by this woman, Jenna Ellis, who was big in the Republican Party. I think she's actually left the Republican Party for some weird reason. But anyway, she was also standing by Rudy Giuliani during his press conferences about Stop the Steal. She's one of these typical, just goofy conservative women who go get a law degree at some place and then do political activism effectively. And she was saying, her argument was basically, we don't know, these people at the club, we don't have any evidence that they've given their life to Jesus. So they put their faith in Jesus, and so they won't be saved after being killed. And thus, we shouldn't even talk about the murder. We should really talk about the fact that they'll be spending eternity in hell. Now, okay, I do understand that Christians sincerely believe that. On another level, it did. I and a lot of other people just got, wrath of God vibes from statements like that. I mean, these people were just gunned down in their gay club in Colorado Springs, and next thing you know, she's talking about how they're going to be in hell. It's just an odd thing to say. And it does remind me a bit of the Westboro Baptist Church line of, God hates fags. And so that's why he killed these gay soldiers, which was actually why they, had this lawsuit that actually went to the Supreme Court. They were protesting outside of funerals for gay soldiers. And they're basically saying that, God killed your sons because he hates homosexuality. I mean, again, I can understand why a Christian can actually believe this, but it just, it reeks of wrath of God stuff. It is pretty extreme. And I do kind of sense this, I sense something of like, they're feeling like things are out of control for them, and they're losing power, they're being demoralized, and there's this tendency to lash out and to kind of go more extreme. So you kind of expect them or some people, the media expects them to, oh, they're going to moderate, they're going to drop the Trump stuff, whatever. Well, they might very well drop all the Trump stuff, but what they're going to go to is stuff like this. And so I think there's a kind of like general background for this happening. But I think there's also some interest. There might very well be some machinations going on. So when I was at this, the day before Thanksgiving, just kind of relaxing by the pool, I saw this viral video of Fuentes going to a Florida airport and being alongside Kanye and going to meet Donald Trump. Now, Kanye had a pretty interesting video that was put out that I believe was made by Milo Yiannopoulos. And, you can see a little glimpse of an ideology there. Kanye is basically saying, we're going to judge every policy against the Bible. So it is, full on fundamentalism or Christian nationalism or theocracy or whatever. Now, this is rather odd, obviously coming from a rap artist formerly married to Kim Kardashian, but it is what it is. I actually do, as I've said many times, I think Kanye actually sincerely believes in what he's doing. And Fuentes was involved. And so this is a kind of, I think it's a triumph for him in a way. And actually, when I saw it, I couldn't help myself but tweet out like, look, I think this is headed for a disaster. And obviously this is not what I want. Yeah. But look, I'm nothing if not fair. And I try to be. I actually try to, it's hard sometimes, but I try to put away biases and say, like, don't just denounce Kanye or whatever, but say, like, does he sincerely believe this? And is there a kind of coherency to what he's saying? And I would say yes to both of those questions. I think everyone deserves a kind of fair shake. And anyway, so he's with Kanye. There's some kind of dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Now, Trump has since claimed, in a very typical fashion, actually, like, I had no idea who this guy was. I don't know who he is. Blah, blah, blah. But he did that for tons of people. He famously did that with David Duke, even though he very much knew who David Duke was. He actually got into battles with David Duke in the Reform Party in the year 2000 or thereabouts. And obviously, David Duke is much more of a household name than Nick Fuentes is much more of a household name than myself. He knows who David Duke is. Now, I think in the case of Fuentes, he might very well not be lying. I do think that Trump has a TV understanding of popular culture. And so he obviously watches Fox a lot. Who knows what kind of garbage he consumes. But I think he has a kind of mainstream TV understanding of the world and popular culture. So I actually think it's believable, at least, that he actually didn't know who Fuentes is. But that almost begs questions or raises more questions than it answers. So it's very clear from this video that Kanye put out that Milo is instigating this. The other thing that I noticed, I hate to say it, call me a self-centered narcissist if you must. Milo was basically dressed almost in a cosplay version of me in 2016. So Milo was more famous for being a kind of flamboyant homosexual with dyed blonde hair. He now has dark hair, brown hair. Maybe it's his natural color, I don't know. And he's wearing a gray suit. So look, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but with Milo, everything's a kind of crafted personality. And so I do think that he was trying to kind of imitate me or evoke me. And I think that also kind of goes along with a much broader thing where all of these people are kind of like endlessly trying to recreate 2016, because 2016, for better and for worse, was this moment when it felt like something could change. The establishment, particularly the Republican establishment, was just on its heels. All these people who previously didn't have influence were shoved into the spotlight. The game changed, the language changed. It was crazy. There, as I've talked about, there's that just this kind of Dionysian feeling about being online in 2016, where tweets were going viral and liberals were crying, and it just felt like even doing social media kind of had an impact. I mean, I often feel now, I'll kind of put out my thoughts, or I'll use Twitter as like a rough draft for something that I'm thinking through. I don't really go on Twitter for the years now and feel like we're fighting the meme war, It's just, at least for me, it does not have that feeling at all, nor probably should it. All of that stuff was an illusion. But I do think that there are people who are trying to revive this, and they've got their hands on this billionaire. And what's interesting about Kanye is, when the controversy first struck a month ago, there was he was working hand in glove with Candace Owens, and they went to Paris Fashion Week together, and donned White Lives Matter t-shirts or whatever, and Helvetica typeface, black shirt with white letters in the reverse, and etc. And she was actually, from what I can tell, behind Kanye's rise in 2018, when he started making noise, and the next thing you know, he was in the White House. Now, Kim Kardashian also got invitations to the White House for prison reform or something. But Kanye was there to engage in philosophy reform, I guess, just his, unending, illogical, semi-coherent, mostly incoherent ramblings about religion and being, I guess. So this has happened before. Candace has instigated it. There's clearly like a connection between Candace Owens. He purchased Parler. Am I right to say that went through? I think it did. But anyway, he was at least talking about purchasing Parler. I think he has. Parler is owned and operated by Candace Owens' husband. So there's a lot. I mean, to call all of this like self-serving is an understatement. It is. I think Kanye is genuine. I obviously, the kind of weird Christian anti-Semitism plus we are the Jews because we're the blood of Christ and blood. Needless to say, this is not my cup of tea, and I find it pretty dumb, to be frank. And I actually don't think it's like ultimately productive. I mean, who knows, but whatever. It's not my cup of tea. But I do think Kanye, to be fair to Kanye, I do feel like he is genuine. I think he is a good faith actor. Now, Candace, look, she might believe what she says to some degree. She's a grifter. She's just gonna do her thing, and she sees a billionaire who's getting kicked off social media, and she suggests that he purchase the social media company of her husband. I mean, I can't imagine something more grifty than that. Now, Milo has re-entered the scene. Now, I think a lot of us thought that Milo was really over. I mean, he became a kind of poster boy for Gamergate, first off. And then he became a poster boy for the alt-right for a while, and I think was ultimately pushed aside in favor of myself. I think to be honest here, I think he has a long-term grudge about this. And then when these tapes reemerged of him talking with Joe Rogan, where he was in effect excusing pedophilia and really pedophilia of the worst kind. I mean, he was joking about being abused by a priest, saying it could be an amazing experience. One thing I remember, he actually made a claim that in all his LA partying that he does and all these amazing parties that he's invited to. I mean, again, all of these claims are pretty dubious, but that he saw very young boys being abused in some ways at these parties. Now, if you witness, again, I actually think he's lying, to be honest, because I think he's a sociopath and a liar. But regardless, he might be telling the truth. And if you've witnessed this, the notion that you don't name names or go to the police is absurd. And it's kind of interesting how no one focuses on that, because I think basically at the end of the day, everyone just assumes Milo is lying. But he was just bragging about it. But it was all in his more kind of broader attempt to put a gay face on right-wing politics. And he's now putting a black face on right-wing politics. So we've replaced Trump with Kanye. Then he's also, I think, pretty consciously replacing me or some 2016 version of myself and putting the face of this, I guess now formerly gay, he claims both Catholic and Jewish identity. Who knows what the hell he is? Again, when you're dealing with a liar, just take everything they say with a truckload of salt. I mean, it's all bullshit. I don't even know there's no even point in speculating about what he actually believes, or is he really dedicated to Judaism? Is he a Catholic? Was he gay? Is he now not gay? Is he now straight? It's just, the guy is a sociopath. There's no identity there. You're just you're in a house of mirrors. What's real? What's an inflection? I don't know. I mean, it's just all nonsense. Look, I would say this about Nick Fuentes. I guess I'm in a very fair mood tonight. I do think that Nick Fuentes, no matter how obnoxious I might find him, at least his public persona, I do think he's actually a good faith actor. I don't think he's just a lying sociopath. I think he believes this stuff. I think a lot of it is very understandably, in a way, just callow, just immature nonsense. Let's go back 1,000 years where, if a woman expressed an opinion, you could throw her in the river or something. Let's have a Catholic dictatorship. All of this stuff, when you hear teenagers or men in their 20s are very immature. I mean, I know what it's like. When you hear that among youth, it's just you just laugh it off. It might come from an honest place, but it's just kind of venting or whatever you want to say, tough talk. But I do think that he's genuine. And obviously, no one in their right mind would turn down a dinner meeting with Donald Trump. So I understand why he did it. He might think that Trump and Ye will join forces and it will be this Christian nationalism, or who knows what he thinks exactly. Whatever you want to say about him, and I do find him obnoxious, I do think he is a good faith actor. I think he believes what he's doing. And much as in Stop the Steal and in 2021, January 6th, he's getting dragged along by people who are using him. This is what I would speculate. So let me read this article. This was published at Timcast, so they have a blog. This is Tim Pool's blog. So really one of the most obnoxiously stupid human beings on the planet, Tim Pool, whose popularity reveals much about our civilization. This is written by Cassandra Fairbanks. Yeah, former Russian asset, but not in an interesting way. It's not like she's a devious spy or something. She just worked for Sputnik and RT, just got paid. She's just a hack. I knew her. Anyway, let me just read this article and I'll tell you what I think about it. So Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, brought political powerhouse Karen Giorno and controversial commentator Nick Fuentes to dinner with former President Donald Trump at Mar-A-Lago this week. It's interesting that she describes Nick Fuentes as controversial, as opposed to Christian nationalist or white nationalist or white supremacist or neo-Nazi or whatever. Ye and the former president have both announced their intention to run for the White House in 2024. The dinner between Ye and Trump had been previously arranged, but the additional guests were brought on by author and political commentator Milo Yiannopoulos. There we have it. So this was arranged. Milo, who is still clearly a wheeler dealer, he interned for Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's one of these people who has this kind of like preternatural ability to insinuate himself in places. He's working behind the scenes in this, and he's admitted it because Milo ultimately wrote this story. I know how this stuff works. You give things to a dumb reporter, and she just is a stenographer, basically, who has been named by the fashion and entertainment mogul as his campaign director. So Milo is already Ye's campaign director. He has weaseled his way in there. On Thursday evening, Ye shook up Thanksgiving when he tweeted a video featuring a discussion between himself and Yiannopoulos about the meeting. And in that video, that's the one I was referencing earlier, Ye is kind of being the alpha dog vis-a-vis Trump. It's fairly interesting. Ye said that he thinks Trump was, quote, most perturbed, end quote, by him asking the former president to be his VP. Well, I can understand that. But the former president was, quote, really impressed with Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, unlike so many of the lawyers and people that he was left with on his 2020 campaign, he's actually a loyalist. That was Kanye's statement. When he didn't know where the lawyer is, you'll still have your loyalist, Ye said, seemingly ad-libbing a line that would have fit perfectly into one of his hit songs. Great writing, Cassandra. Ye continued, when all the lawyers said, forget it, Trump's done, the loyalists were running up on the White House. Yeah, J6. The rap icon explained that he questioned the former president about not pardoning people who were arrested for protesting on his behalf on January 6th, and suggested that he bring back the people who worked on his 2016 campaign, but have since been canceled. So they want to basically recreate 2016. So they're playing two games here. On the one hand, they're using Kanye. This is the real Trump. This is the real Christian nationalist. They recognize reality that Trump has obviously a much better chance to win. So they're kind of pushing him to do this. So they're doing this move on him. Ye said that Trump attempted to change the subject of his pardoning of Alice Johnson, a grandmother who had been serving life without the possibility of parole for nonviolent drug offenses. The woman's freedom has become a passion project for Kim Kardashian. Trump, according to Ye, had said that there's a misspelling typo in here. He had said that he pardoned her for him, that is Kanye, not Kardashian. Things at the dinner began to unravel when Trump insulted Kardashian, the mother of Ye's children. When Trump started basically screaming at me at the table, telling me I'm going to lose. I mean, has that ever worked for anyone in history? I'm like, hold on, you're talking to Ye, the candidate said at the end of the video. According to a source familiar with the events at the dinner, this is Milo, who asked to remain anonymous. This is, again, Milo. Ye had arrived at Mar-A-Lago with Giorno, who served as Trump's Florida chief strategist in 2016, and later a senior advisor for his campaign, as a power move to show that he's serious about the White House bid. Giorno has worked for multiple presidents and is regarded as a highly formidable at running campaigns. Yeah, just some hack. Though several reporters are citing anonymous sources to claim that Fuentes was not present at the dinner, multiple people have confirmed to Timcast that he was, including Yiannopoulos and Giorno. Okay, he was present. He was brought there by Milo. Trump was not given a heads up Kanye would be bringing Fuentes with him to Mar-a-Lago, and Trump did not meet Fuentes while he was there, according to a person familiar. Nick attended the dinner and sat across from the president. I sat to the president's right and Ye to his left, Giorno said. The president was by himself for dinner, but invited Ye to meet some people in the patio. Okay. We had a traditional turkey dinner, which wasn't on the menu, Giorno told Kimcast. It was delicious, blah, blah, blah. Yiannopoulos, according to the source, sent Giorno as a signal to Trump that, she's literally repeating paragraphs. She's such an idiot. It gets juicy. Halfway through the dinner, Trump gets a call, the source told Kimcast. When he comes back, the whole tenor of the dinner changes. And he starts ranting about Kim Kardashian, saying that she's disgusting and all the rest of it. Ye just looked around the table and said, "That's the mother of my children that you're talking about." By this point, the whole meeting had become a disaster. Okay, that's interesting. I genuinely don't think that Trump knew who Fuentes was. And I'm not saying that out of any kind of personal bias. Trump starts getting edgy, antsy, fidgety, and angry. He can't get them out of there fast enough, the source said. The source is Milo, clearly. When you get up to leave, there's an enormous line of people who want photos with Ye, and not a single one of them asked for one with Trump alone, the source said. All right, that's just a complete lie. That's just pissing on Trump. I mean, it's just so stupid. You can see where they're going with this. Trump was just kind of allowed to join in some of them. By the end, Trump was like, "Is the car here? Is the car here? Where's the car?" This is the kicker. Fuentes, once an avid Trump supporter, is rumored to be in line to serve as the communication director for the Ye 24 campaign. So this thing is written by Milo. And Cassandra served as a stenographer, and Milo is basically promoting this in the media, that he wants Fuentes as a campaign communications director for Ye, which just is pretty absurd. I mean, I guess it's just crazy enough to work or something like that, in the sense that he is, a huge live streamer, has a built-in audience, much more than, say, Corey Lewandowski or any of these idiots that worked on 2016. This is what I would suggest. So all of this is kind of fascinating and just crazy enough to be true or what have you. But what I would suggest is that there might be something else going on here. First off, all of this can be explained through existing dynamics. Fuentes, he has some silly infatuation with Kanye and this Christian nationalism stuff. He's also a white nationalist or whatever. I mean, this is kind of typical. I can kind of see him doing this, easily to be explained. And as I said, I do think he's acting in good faith, whatever we want to say about it. Milo isn't. I mean, this is what I would suggest, is that Milo has long been a kind of infant, you could say, of Rebecca Mercer and the Mercer family. The Mercer family is already on board with DeSantis. The Mercers were not on board with Trump. And Robert Mercer is the famous guy. He's a quant, hedge fund manager, billionaire donor to Republican causes. They were not on board with Trump at the beginning. They were on board with Cruz and other people. They got on board with Trump when the whole conservative establishment got on board in 2016, when they felt like there was nothing they could do. They would prefer someone like DeSantis. DeSantis speaks their language. Yes, Trump has been kind of a culture war fanatic, but Trump has these nationalist instincts that kind of come out. I mean, in a book, he supported national health care. He'll claim that, he wants to tax all these corporations and things like that. No, he didn't do any of this. I'm well aware of this. His administration was just a typical Republican administration. I don't think anything would have been that different if Jeb had been elected. Now, there definitely wouldn't have been a Muslim ban and all this talk of the wall. But in terms of the policies that were successful, I don't think it would have been that different. So they would rather have DeSantis than Trump, the billionaire Republican donor types. Why not use your man, Milo? Promise him that he can once again enter the public eye and be a sensation once again. And at the same time, really harm Trump's campaign. Because just the act of bringing Fuentes, Trump can claim, as he has done, that he didn't know who Fuentes is. And 80% chance, 90% chance that's true. But he still nevertheless had dinner with him. the whole like full on denial of David Duke in 2016, you can't do that again. And so this is harmful. Just the whole scene is harmful. And Kanye, he can be on the one hand harmful. On the other hand, he can actually sop up all of that online Trump energy. There can be some weird anti-Trump movement in which all the online right goes with Kanye because he's the Christian nationalist. He's the full-on. We've moved past the, in many ways, remarkably secular campaign that Trump ran in 2015 and the first half of 2016 before he started talking about abortion and judges in summer of 2016. He never talked about any of that stuff. He never mentioned gay marriage. He never mentioned any of it. If anything, I mean, he was photographed with the gay flag, a rainbow flag. If anything, he would probably be more inclined to say something like, we can't trust these Muslims because they abuse gays and women or something like that. He would take that kind of almost neocon line, if anything. So you want to create a yay campaign that will, at the very least, damage Trump and could also sop up all that energy. So all these people who would support Trump are, hot after Kanye, and they're demanding that we jail abortionists, and, the 10 Commandments will the only constitution we need, or whatever they're going to say. And they have prayer tent revivals with Kanye in the lead. And they think of themselves as just so smart because, they're playing the PC police for fools. How can the woke mob call us racist when we're advancing and worshiping a black man? Ooh, how smart we are. So I can see this damaging Trump in two ways. Immediately, just the scandal of it, and then long term, if Kanye's campaign actually does have legs. Can I prove this? No. Is this kind of connecting the dots or reading between the lines? Yes. But there does seem to be a possibility that this is happening. Because this isn't happening from like the Steve Bannon wing of the right. They're still Trump. They might even like DeSantis, but they're still pro-Trump. Carrie Lake, she did a thing I saw where she was just like, we need Trump in the White House. He's the only one who can do it. I'm there to fight for you. Hint, hint, I want to be your VP. Tulsi's probably angling at that. I can't imagine Tulsi becoming Kanye's VP. MTG is still loyal to Trump, et cetera, et cetera. There's still a Trump thing going on. Yeah, the donors have left. Yes, the RNC hates him, but that's where he was in 2015 anyway. He's done this before. Could you stop it by having something even crazier? And could you use a clear sociopathic liar that is Milo to kind of instigate this? And you don't even need to tell him the whole plan. Just kind of let him roll. He might even do something like this anyway. But you do need connections. I mean, as wily as Milo is, you still need connections to get in the room with a billionaire or a celebrity. It's not exactly easy. This is just something that I would suggest. But I overall think, regardless of whether this theory of mine is correct or not, I overall think that all of this is extremely damaging. It's damaging, it's just ideologically stupid. It's damaging in that way. It is definitely damaging to Trump, although I'm not a Trump fan. I'm just analyzing the situation. And I think it's also just damaging in the sense that it's making the wider public just crazier.